ready for a Tuesday edition of Kelly and Company with Ramya Ahmedin and Nisreen Abdelmajid. We will be talking about disability representation in maybe one of your favorite films that's getting another adaptation. We're going to be also throwing back to AMI memories with Joeita Gupta and Megan Gilmore, two exceptional journalists with a great appreciation for radio broadcasting and journalism. Let's get into it.
This is Kelly and Company.
Alicia Grace Chenier is a passionate advocate for disability representation in media. Alicia is here to discuss the upcoming live-action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon and the opportunities it presents for authentic representation. Alicia, the original How to Train Your Dragon animated film was notable for its portrayal of Hiccup, who becomes an amputee. With the live-action remake on the horizon, what are your thoughts on how the franchise is approaching disability representation this time around?
Yeah, so something too, How to Train Your Dragon, that was the movie series and trilogy that really got me to accept my disability. That was the first animated.
No
I was 10
way.
years old and I seen Hiccup with a disability and I was like mind blown. And growing up with that character, like I think for me and a lot of other people in the disability community, it is a very special character and his journey to learning to live with his disability and overcome like, kind
Mm.
of like just being comfortable with it is something that we all go through. And so when I seen that there was a live action coming out, I was like, oh, here we go. This is gonna be interesting. If anyone has anything to say, I will be the one as much as I love it.
Mhm.
I think they really have to tread lightly, especially because it's in the Viking era. And like Viking time where, limb differences were not like unusual. And so there are already characters that have been shown that do not have authentic disabilities in this. But I'm hoping that like when the second movie comes out in a few years, hopefully that they cast someone who is like who can play Hiccup authentically with a limb difference because that would be like tremendous.
Because the first movie, he becomes disabled like near the end, you said, right?
Yeah. In like the
Hiccup.
last like
Okay.
10, 15 minutes. Yes.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about, stretching ahead to the second movie,
Yes.
where
Yeah.
the representation is throughout. Okay.
Yeah. But I
So,
think, oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say, but I think too, like the way that they're treading, like the directors have said, like there's gonna be some differences in the show, so I'm kind of worried that they might take out that aspect of
Hmm.
Hiccup, but I'm
Mm,
I'm hopeful that they do not.
this,
But
yeah,
yeah,
this is why I don't like remakes sometimes because they change a lot and it's very different. They try to make it the same, and no, it's very different. Especially live action. It's
yeah,
not as authentic as it used to be. Like I watched How to Train Your Dragon, and I found it very interesting. Like the disability representation there is so important. That small scene of that disability representation made a difference to you and how you felt comfortable and how many people in the disability community accepted themselves and grew up with How to Train Your Dragon, and that made a big difference to them. So I feel like the producers, the writers, they don't see how that small scene can make a really big impact on people. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know, like, how do you feel about the live action though? Do you feel like it's still going
um,
to be there?
considering how other live actions have gone, it's
Hmm.
not a Disney movie, so I'm a little less worried, I think. Um, but considering everything, I still want to tread lightly because why recreate something that has already had so much impact? Like I get like the
Yep.
fans want more, but like why recreate this as a live action where there's so much more you have to think about and implement,
Hmm.
especially with the dragons too. Like that's a whole other topic that we haven't even
Mhm.
like that's for
Right.
another day. But I think the disability, like for something that is as crucial as this, the writers have to take very cautious takes with this. And I know the director and writer originally of How to Train Your Dragon is very like aware of this stuff. So that's why I am hopeful.
That's
Um,
encouraging.
but
Yeah.
you know, there's other aspects to it where it's like there's a whole team, but I think with him keeping the story, he said, very similar to the original. Yeah. So I'm gonna see
Well,
it and
because
then I'll let you know.
keep us posted, yeah, because you're going to actually go see it before June 13th, which is kind of wicked.
Yeah.
The interesting part is exactly what you're saying. Like, they're aware of these conversations already, and we've had very parallel conversations about other movies or TV shows that are gonna come out, and we're all kind of like whispering around, being like, "And are you gonna portray disability properly and appropriately, or are we gonna get mad at you?" And that kind of thing is excellent because, you know, going into it, even when they're saying like we are going to make some creative choices, take some creative liberty on this, and it's not going to be like the original, we're like, yeah, but keep in mind that people with disabilities are waiting and wondering about how you're going to portray
Yeah.
this part of the narrative and the characterization.
We are waiting and anticipating, and we will probably have lots to say.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Feel
not
like
silently.
either
Pretty
way,
vocal.
this movie means so much to me. I'm probably just gonna be sobbing through the entire thing either. Anyways,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I feel like the director has already come out and talked about how they're actually bringing in LGBTQ representation in this,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
which is really cool and not in the first original movie or in the character
Mm-hmm.
plotline. So that will be quite interesting to see how
Okay.
that takes. But yeah, I'm hopeful, like hopefully cautious, maybe is the right word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Whew,
you need to
okay.
take notes for us
Anything?
for that.
Yeah, definitely. Any other movies or films or projects that you're looking forward to in the summer? Because this is our last chat with you, Alicia, and we've had such incredible talks about disability representation in media. A lot of Disney coverage
Mhm.
for sure, but you know, Disney's so easy to poke at. But
Right.
there's, you know, there's always something out there, and like we've made the conversation so open and out there because that is like this is a microcosm of how we're all feeling about these kinds of things, right?
Yeah. I think in like the world of, movies and film, there's it's an animated movie. I think it's with I could be with DreamWorks or Disney, called Elio. And I noticed while watching the trailer, he actually has an eye patch on. So whether that's to fix like a lazy eye type of thing or just,
Hmm.
for something else, I'm interested to see what that entails. And then my own personal work, auditioning every day or like, when I get auditions. And right now I'm actually doing an apprenticeship with AMI. So I will be doing my
Yay.
own TV show pitch in just the
Amazing.
next coming weeks.
Yeah,
That's
we're looking
excellent.
forward to that.
Thank
Yeah. Well, it's been lovely having you on the show as well. You've been very fun. These Tuesdays once a month have just flown by since we started you on the
Right?
show because you haven't been with us for a very long time. But yeah, memorable conversations
you. Thank you guys.
Yeah.
I've
and
had an
rants.
absolute blast.
Alicia Grace Chenier, thank you for shedding light on these important aspects of representation in film. Your insights highlight the significance of authentic storytelling and the impact it can have on audiences. We look forward to seeing how the How to Train Your Dragon franchise evolves in this regard. All the best in all the work you're doing and everything else you're up to. I gotta say, Remya, I feel like
Hmm.
representation in film, I have to say this again, the producers, the writers, they don't think that this small scene made a big impact on so many
Mm-hmm.
people. And like Alicia said, she grew up watching this film. She grew up and as she's watching it, she feels accepted in the community. She felt like
Yeah.
she sees her in Hiccup, which is absolutely amazing. It's wild,
For a
and I feel like a
10-year-old.
lot of films, yeah, and a lot of people in the film industry should look at that and see, okay, this is actually making a big impact. Why don't we have more of this? Why is this still such a struggle to find more of a disability representation in film.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And children, right? Like movies made for children, film made for children.
Yeah.
We know the kind of impact it has. If you grow up with disability or if you have family members or friends with disabilities, we know the kind of insight and impact that it makes for you. So absolutely, we're keeping track.
Yeah, and I
So,
absolutely don't remember anything that I grew up watching that had a disability,
yeah,
representation in it, which is sad. So,
it's still a
seeing
rare
this,
occasion.
it's yeah, exactly.
Hmm. Well, we're wrapping up Kelly and Company at the end of June, and you can celebrate the show with us. You can celebrate the live era of AMI with us and yourselves for being part of this family. And here's a pair of people who've been part of the Kelly Co family as well as other AMI shows and have basically just expanded the world of broadcasting in such meaningful ways. Let's take a listen.
Let's catch up with some company from our past, people who have left a mark on Kelly and Company or other live shows through the AMI audio live show era. Joita Gutta has been around with us as a host, reporter, and so much more on the network. She was on Live from Studio 5 and The Pulse. Megan Gilmore was our freelance reporter on Kelly and Company for a lot of our run out there. And ladies, thank you so much for being with us today as Nazreen and I flash back with you to talk a little bit about the past. Now, I'm curious, and I'm going to start with you, Megan. You both came to us with experience already to AMI audio from different skill bases, different perspectives, but also experiences. Definitely lots of it. How did this experience add to your skill base and going forward to where you are now? And welcome back, Meg.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I was one of the first regular contributors for Kelly and Company back in 2016, and I worked as a print journalist, so in newspapers, and I did some freelance work in the magazine world. So Kelly and Company was actually my first foray into audio. And then from there, just through a series of events, I ended up filling in on a bunch of different AMI audio live shows. So I guest hosted The Pulse for a little bit before Joita took that show over. I filled in Vacation Time for Live from Studio 5. And then when it moved into Now with Dave Brown, I was a contributor on that show for forever. And then actually did a podcast for a couple of years, and Nazreen was the technical producer on that. So yeah, like that's actually what AMI added to my skill set. It was actually the audio side of things, and that was one of the things that prompted me to move to Ottawa to get a master's degree, because Andy Frank at the time wanted me to do more audio work, and I didn't have those skills, so I wanted to go back to school in part to take a course specifically in that, which is how I got to do some of the editing on my podcast, which I hope made things easier for Nazreen.
That is really cool.
Oh yeah,
that's so neat.
You were
and
amazing.
Doing so many different things, especially after Dave left the Pulse. Joita, let's jump into your history before. I'm very curious because I'm not sure a lot of people knew what you were doing in the field a long time ago.
That's probably for the best. I fell into working at AMI quite by chance. I had worked at a community radio station in Toronto, CKLN 88.1 FM, which was a campus community radio station affiliated with then Ryerson University, now Toronto Metropolitan University. Regrettably, that particular radio station doesn't exist, but it did give many programmers their first opportunity as a broadcaster. And when I met my husband, who had been a volunteer reader at VoicePrint at the time, he said, let me introduce you to a producer I know at VoicePrint, now AMI, known as Paul Daniel. And maybe Paul Daniel can have you do a couple of author interviews or something. And that's exactly what happened. I did a couple of author interviews on a show called Contact. I actually still have the CDs from those interviews going. That must have been 2011 or something. And then once I got a full-time job, I told Paul I couldn't really be available to do interviews anymore. And thank you so much for the opportunity. And quite out of the blue in 2015, Paul contacted me and said, listen, we've got a paid gig. Are you interested? We're trying to make a move towards live programming, and we're looking for members from the disability community, ideally with some broadcast experience, who might be able to help us launch this new phase at AMI. And I was really happy to give it a shot. I didn't expect to be hired because I didn't think I had enough. I just didn't feel I had enough experience, and I knew they had amazing talent like Kelly MacDonald, so why would they want me? But I was pleasantly surprised to have an opportunity. And that the rest, as they say, is history. I've had a couple of years working on Live from Studio 5, and those years were memorable. We started out with the audio show, and I started out as a co-host 1 day a week and gradually worked my way up to 5 days a week. I was part of the Live from Studio 5 transition to a TV show, including the, I would like to think now, infamous road trip where we went from city to city in Canada. I think it was in 2018. And once they decided that they would like to move away from Live from Studio 5 and bring in Now with Dave Brown, they offered me the opportunity to host The Pulse. And I worked in that first year with Enrica Delano as my producer. And then the year after that, in 2020, I guess Andy Frank realized he could trust me to not just host, but also produce. So I gained a lot of skills in my time at AMI, not just learning how to, anyone can open their mouth and talk, but I've been uniquely privileged to learn from the best in the business, whether that was Jim Van Horn, or to have a great deal of mentorship and support from people like Mike Ross, who I might otherwise not have met. And I learned a lot about how to produce. I've subsequently gone on to do some work for the CBC, and I worked at Metro Morning for a while and a couple of other places. So it certainly helped me get my foot in the door. But the thing that I really appreciate about AMI is how many opportunities AMI was able to extend to people in the disability community who have then taken that opportunity, that experience of broadcasting, and leveraged it into other things, even if it's not all broadcasting. I know somebody who's doing, comedy. I think somebody else is doing work with the government. But I think the fact that AMI offered paid work to so many people with disabilities and gave them the opportunity to learn from the best in the business, I think it's made a huge difference to a lot of people, myself and tons of others.
You're speaking directly to our apprentices, to people who are aspiring out there. And I remember being a kid and being that person that wanted to do so much and be on air. When I came to work at AMI, they said, no, that won't be happening. Don't be doing that stuff. But I too had my first really interviews that were organized. When I say organized, I did a few for Voice Print back in the day that were, Kelly, we're bringing this person in, talk to them. Okay. And we were crawling, definitely not even close to walking at that point. Then when Paul and I started doing Contact, which Joey had referenced, and then I had to step away when I became a coordinator, got too busy, and then moving over to the TV side. So you bring back so many of those thoughts, Joey, when you mention that and the move forward and the different things that we had the opportunity to do. It's really something. And when you express, both of you, where you are, what you're doing, the encouragement, the chance to do so many things, all I think about is our apprentices listening in. Niz, go ahead.
I was one of them. Yeah. I was one of those interns that looked up to Joita and everybody that was just natural broadcasters. And then when she moved to, you were saying that, you learn so much, but I learned so much from you guys, just how amazing and natural you were at your jobs. And I was listening to your interviews and I'm like, oh, the way
you were part of the TV side for now, Niz. You guys were doing that every day.
Yeah. Like I started off with like Live with Studio 5 and Now with Dave Brown and transitioned to many of those shows that and many amazing employees that just shined in this company. Like honestly, just shined bright. And I love that chance. I love that chance that AMI gave us all, whether, I had so many mentors like you, Joita, and it was a great privilege to have somebody like you who really showed me that, anything can happen, honestly. But
You're making me blush.
Yeah, no, it's true though. It's true. Like I remember those days. Like I always, whenever I asked for help, you came and answered anything that I that I needed. Like it was amazing to have mentors like you, for sure. But what were your worst and best moments? Let's start with you, Megan.
Oh, my worst and best moments. Oh, wow. Worst moments. I'm sure some of, especially when I moved on to like what was live from Studio 5 and then became Now with Dave Brown, like those early days when they called me up to co-host, like when Juita was on vacation, I would fill in for her. I'm sure I was a terrible co-host at the beginning. And I'll always remember the day that Daniel Panamando, who was one of our producers at the time, we were sitting in a post-show meeting, and he said, "Megan, I could hear you sound like it just sounded way more natural today. Like you broke it. Like you're like you cracked whatever needed to be cracked in your end." And I remember that felt a lot. There actually my worst moment was when the bus did not call my stop. Back in pre-COVID days, we had to come into the studio. Bus didn't call my stop, and I was almost late. And like producer Kevin is like calling me on my cell phone, being like, "Yo, like where are you? We have to do a live show." And I'm like running in, and I'd fallen on the ice because it was winter, and like it was this whole thing. So that was practically one of the worst moments. Best moments. Oh, like there were a lot. Miss Rena and I got to meet a lot of really interesting people when we were doing the Connecting Disability podcast.
Yeah.
That was really fun. I think when I was co-hosting, anytime that there was natural banter and like Mike Ross and I were genuinely making each other laugh on air, Corinne Van Duzen and I had some moments like that as well. That was really good. And then actually I have a prop. So one of my first segments on Kelly & Company was with Alexa Jovanovic, who is now like the founder of iDesign. So like this was one of her prototypes, the blue denim jacket with the white lines and the black braille beads. But we spoke to her when she was just like graduating from university. Yeah. And this was just a prototype. And Kelly & Company was actually her first media appearance.
Wow.
So like you heard
cool.
it here first. Yeah. And so then I was that annoying person who would email her every few months and be like, "Has it started yet? Has it started yet? Can I buy things? Can I buy things?" Right. And now like partnerships with Mattel for like the Barbie pieces. She's custom design. Yeah. She's done pieces for Stevie Wonder and Andrea Bocelli.
Insane.
And for me, she did my custom grad dress when I graduated from Carleton a couple years ago. So that's always a fun one. And I wore this jacket to an expo that was in Ottawa on Saturday, and somebody came up to me and they were like, "Oh, like it's Braille," and I was like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Oh, do you want to know like how you can get like not this piece because they're all sold out, but like other ones?" And she was like, "Oh no, I know about this company."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh, like that's just so great." Wow. Yeah, like that all started here. That's still my mother's favorite thing I've ever done in my journalism career, like a decade plus now. My mother does not care about awards. She does not care about award nominations. She's just like, "Remember when you did the fashion one?" And like the first piece I ever bought from Alexa was a scarf for my mom's Mother's Day present. And
that is beautiful. Wow.
It's still her most favorite thing I've done. Yep.
And it lives on like in the way of your mom and her feeling for it. And I always think about that when it comes to audience members, people listening, and we have no idea a lot of time. Doing what we do, we'd have no idea. Okay, Joita, best and worst moments.
You know, it's hard to pick a single moment as either the best or the worst. I would say in terms of the experience overall, the worst aspect of it was entirely self-inflicted. And that was, I was working a full-time job in addition to being at AMI for a long time. That meant that I would do live from Studio 5, come and do the pre-show meeting, have a 2-hour program, do the post-show meeting, leave, and then go and start at the office, and I put in a full shift. So I was effectively working a 12-hour day. And even after we made the switch over during the pandemic and I started hosting and producing The Pulse, you still had a lot to do in the lead up to a show, as you know, Kelly. So it was like having, it wasn't like having, it was having 2 full-time jobs. And I think it really took a toll on me. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. No complaints. I'm very grateful, but I can't say I recommend the workload. It really was quite exhausting. And as for the best aspects of the job, I mean, there's so much value in doing some of the work that I did, especially on the Pulse. I was actually really proud of some of the work that I did. A documentary on medical assistance in dying. I was very proud of that. An election special where I had to track down the disability representatives from all the 4 major parties, which I know sounds like a pretty straightforward thing, except it's not, because they couldn't be bothered to talk to anyone from AMI. And I remember spending almost 6 weeks basically hassling these people to get an interview for an election special, and just having the opportunity to talk to some remarkable people doing fantastic work in various ways, improving the conditions for people with disabilities. And when I had editorials, I had a lot of editorial freedom on the Pulse, which I really appreciated. I don't think I'll ever have that level of editorial freedom again. And so I don't know whether Andy Frank was extremely trusting or whether what was going on there. But the fact that he gave me so much latitude to be creative, to take on controversial topics, everything from menstruation right through to talking about people with disabilities being persecuted in places like Kenya. He gave me so much latitude. I don't think I'll ever have that professionally. Getting that level of freedom from an employer, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, agreed.
So true.
Wow.
Yeah. Joita, what did this AMI audio live show format do for the disabled community? What do you think?
I think the biggest thing, and I talked about this earlier on in the program, and I think the point bears repeating. When I was in university, I came across a distressing statistic that 7 out of 10 people who were blind or low vision were either underemployed or unemployed. And many years later, I'm not going to age myself, but quite a number of years later, they had similar research coming out of the CNIB, and they said people who are blind or low vision are very underemployed, about 20 to 30%. That's the rate of employment in the disability community. In general, it's a problem, but in the blind community specifically, it's a real problem. And I think these years at AMI, where we did live programming, opened up opportunities for many people, not just to have the opportunities to be, hosts and co-hosts and reporters. That's obviously, important. But I think it gave people the opportunity to learn other skills. Megan talked about, learning to be a tech. You learn to be a better writer. You learn to be a producer. You gain all of this experience, even if you don't end up working as a journalist or as a broadcaster. And of course, I think as many people with disabilities as possible should work as journalists and broadcasters. And I hope that AMI and other broadcasters will open their doors wide. But even if you don't end up working as a journalist, I think the skill sets that I think other people have gained, you can never take that away from someone. You always gain those skills. You always have that experience. You always have the opportunity to work with remarkable people. And as long as I shall live, I will have appreciated the fact that somebody took a chance on me. Someone somewhere didn't see the disability. They saw the potential. They saw the ability. And I think that's the greatest gift that you can give a person with a disability, is saying to them, yes, you can, you have the skills, you have the requisite talent to make a difference, not just to have a job and to bring home an income, which is no small matter, but just to be able to say you have the ability to really push the agenda and push the envelope, make things better, not just for yourself, but for the disability community as a whole.
Megan and Joita, thank you both so much for walking down memory lane. Appreciate it. Fantastic journalists and broadcasters. We're talking here, Joita Gutta and Megan Gilmore, right here, revisiting with us as we celebrate the live show era.
It's lovely to go back down memory lane with the people who've been part of our Kelly Co community for so long. And we have more of these conversations coming your way before we wrap on June 27th. On the next edition of Kelly and Company, being nosy about others is frowned upon, but being nosy about yourself is important when it comes to your sinuses. Ha ha. That's Frances Wong. She's going to join us tomorrow to talk about that health aspect. Also, if you're thinking about closing your business, Kevin Shaw is going to talk about how to wind down your small business the right way with grace and strategy. No loose ends. So come back for that for tomorrow's edition of Kelly and Company.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.